Welcome to Magic Club. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Jordan Gould.
Howdy.
And we've got a very special guest. This guy is kind of a magic hero to us because he is not only a fantastic performer, he's a very, very clever innovator. Every time you see him perform something, he's got his own take on it, which is really just neat and extremely practicable. Frank Olivier. Jordan, care to talk about your buddy Frank here?
I met Frank when I was about 13 years old. Went to a party, and he was doing card tricks. And I watched Frank perform for, I don't know, like an hour, just doing nonstop amazing miracles, one after the other. And then at the end of the night, I asked if he could show me a rubber band trick, and he taught me the boomerang rubber band trick, which is one of the most difficult things to learn and perform. And I spent like the next 2 weeks straight practicing. And the next time I saw him, because Frank, you put me on like your mailing list and invited me to all these sort of hip events all over San Francisco that you were putting on, parties and shows. And I came back and was able to do it, and you were impressed enough to invite me to more stuff. But you used to live in a firehouse and throw these big, crazy, fun parties with all these amazing performers who would come, and you'd have like the Rubber Boy and the Yo-Yo King. And as a kid, Frank was like
It's
the
like a
coolest guy
superhero
you could
lineup.
ever meet. Yeah.
Or supervillain.
And he's always been very supportive, with all these world-class performers putting on shows in his house slash in his firehouse. He always encouraged me to bring new material to work on and perform. And Frank's amazing. So
Frank, tell us about this firehouse and these crazy weird shows you brought Jordan to.
Oh, we did. I lived for a long, long time in loft spaces. Now I'm a family guy, 2 kids, and we moved into this other sort of a house with, it's got these things called walls and doors that go between rooms for if you want privacy. I think that's what they're for. Yeah. But the place we were in before had this one big, huge room, which is, I don't know, 35 feet by something long, and wild, big-sized parties going on in that big room, and then a kitchen, but it was all sort of open to itself. It wasn't a great space for parties. Good fun.
So
had Steve Miller play a couple of times, had all these different performer friends coming through, trapeze artists and aerialists and jugglers, magicians. It was all a big mix.
That's pretty insane. So I mean, that's kind of neat because it's just I don't know how to describe you, which is sort of what I think is kind of the amazing thing about you is that you're extremely skillful in so many areas, and then part of I think what makes your magic is the fact that you intersect with so many different people, so many different kinds of performers and stuff. Because you can't say, well, Frank's just a magician, which you're a fantastic world-class magician, but you juggle, you do acrobatics, you do all this other amazing stuff. You do comedy. You could just do straight up comedy, not even do a trick or whatever, and you're still an amazing performer. And is that part of the ingredient? Is the fact that you've always just been around just a diverse group of people?
I was someone who's been blessed to kind of know I was going to be a performer since I was young. Like in high school, for my last year of high school, I could have been taking all the college prep classes and doing all that stuff, but no, I wasn't. I didn't have even a thought of going to college. I wanted to do out of high school. I did, which is went through clown college. Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey put on that clown college for a long time.
Oh wow!
And then
I didn't know you went there.
I was heartbroken to not get a contract with Ringling Brothers, which would have put me on the road, living in a train space 3 foot by 6 foot, doing 15 shows a week for a little over $10 a show.
What's acceptance day like at clown college, where they get like the boards and like who Ringling? Do you guys all run up there and like to see who's getting in? What is that like?
Class clown and the most likely to succeed, both the same person.
Were you there around the same time Penn was?
No, Penn was a number of years before I was.
Okay.
I was through with Mike Goodell.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Robert Lind, Uh, other performer, a bunch of professional performers. Charlie Fry was through the year I was,
Oh wow.
so he and I were together there, and
Did he get accepted to Ringling?
I think he did spend a year with me.
Yeah. So
I, on the other hand, got turned down and was heartbroken. Oh, about 2/3 of who they choose was based on who fit the costumes they'd already made. And looking back on it, it's this huge blessing. At the time, it seemed like the biggest curse in the world, but within 3 months, I was doing my own shows in San Francisco, street shows, making way more money, being way more creative than I would have been able to as a first-year clown, and making a lot more money doing street performing than I would have made $155 a week with Ringling,
It is interesting how that often turns out, where you think this is the thing you want, you put in all the effort towards it, and you don't get it, and then the next thing that comes along, or the thing that you create, ends up being far more helpful, far more wonderful. And I've had a number of times in my life where, I want something to go there, it doesn't. I'm like, oh, this sucks. And the next thing that comes along, I'm like, oh man, this is even better than I could have imagined. I got so focused on that, I didn't see all the other opportunities out there. And for you, was it a matter of you're thinking like, okay, my pathway to building my own show and to doing this is going to be able to do Ringling for a while, then I go do this. But then when that was taken away from you, you just said, okay, just go do my own show out of necessity.
Actually, two in, I was sort of just hanging out at home. I was putting together the ideas for my own show, and it was sort of coming together, but it was going slow. And at one point, my mother and father sort of pulled me aside and said, "You realize you're paying rent now, and you haven't paid rent now for a couple months. You're going into debt." There's this moment. Oh yeah, I need to do something here. And that was when I finished putting this show together. I worked out a bunch of ideas for unicycle ballet was in there early on, a 3-club routine. A bunch of these things that I had put together early on were in my very first shows, and it was a good series of ideas. Right around that same time, about a couple months home, and my parents telling me I needed to do something, I was over at my cousin's house, and my cousin got a distraught call from her friend. There was a party going on at my aunt's and cousin's house, and my cousin has this call from a distraught friend who just lost their opening act for this folk music thing 3 nights later. And I overhear this. I could do that. Wait. Interrupt her. She said, my cousin is a juggler, and he'd be delighted to come out and be your opening act. Would he? Oh my gosh, that would be fantastic. They were desperate for this act. I went out to a place called the Hotel Utah in San Francisco, a fun little club. And anytime, if you're looking to break in new material and you can play it in front of a folk crowd, you've got it. If you're looking to do something other than folk music and you're in front of a folk crowd, they're just very, very receptive crowd. So I went out there, was ad-libbing my way through this thing. I'd only halfway written it, and it went brilliantly. Everything was, I was on fire. Everything was just fitting together just so perfectly, and I was so excited. I can do this. And I finished putting together what was going to be a street show, and I polished it all out, and I went out on the streets. Within the month I was out there, sure I was going to do great because I'd done so well at the Hotel Utah, and started struggling like a bear. Oh, it was horrible. Hurry, 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 step right up. The show is about to begin, and go on like this. And I invited my friend Frank Miles, out to watch the show and give me some feedback. And I told them about my great show that I'd had. And he comes back to me at the end of this show. He says, I'm just going to repeat to you some of the words you said to me about a month ago. How magical it was because you didn't know exactly what was coming up next. How you were alive and in the moment. How you were playing with the crowd. How you were making it up a bunch of it as you went along. You're not doing that. And my heart just sort of sunk, and I realized, I thought that's what I was creating when I went and polished it all out. But what I was actually doing was taking the life right out of it.
It's a
And
very interesting point. I think some performers have to go in there with a fully polished thing because they can't go off the rails and they never should. Other
right,
performers, like, I think, kind of like to live in a little bit of that chaos because and that's fun. I think that's the most fun place to perform is if you're in a position where, like, if this trick doesn't work, I'm totally cool with it because I'll come up with something funny or fun on the spot to go do somewhere else. And if you can do that, that energy is wonderful. It's why I push every performer, like, go take improv, go do this, and you'll learn it's really not about does the trick work. It's about the situation in each situation and building on it. And that's your show, is very much these
right.
crazy situations.
Anything that anything you do on the stage can have one of two effects. It can either move you closer to the crowd, and so they feel like they know you personally better through what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're an actor or a singer or a performer or magician, comedian, juggler, whatever it is. What you're doing either is an invitation for people to get to know you, or it's something you put up between yourself and the crowd so they're not going to see who you are. And the exact same words and actions, or the exact same script and the exact same tricks and the exact same everything aren't the determining factor on that. What the determining factor is how much you allow yourself to be present in the moment. How are you allowing people to touch you, or are you scared shitless and
Well,
not?
I mean, your show. What's great about that is there's always this element of, like, you genuinely feel it may not work. You genuinely feel that these things may not come across or pull off because you have this very, very neat way of, like, making it look like it's not this fully polished thing where people. It's nice for some people. It's comforting to slip into the super confident. No, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to go do that, and that's fine. But the thing you got to be pulling off, the stakes better be so high that people, are really pulled into it. Where when we watch you do something and you're like pretend to struggle or you try to do this or it comes across a little just haphazard, it feels spontaneous, and then we're rooting for you because we're like, oh, maybe this will not work.
Well, and when you watch Frank perform, there's very little wasted energy or just things that go off into the ether. I mean, there's a lot of magicians that have patter that sort of doesn't make sense, or what they're saying is kind of like, where's this going? And Frank, I remember there were 4 things that you told me were important about what you're saying on stage. And do you want to reiterate those?
Sure. Those were from Greg Dean, who teaches a comedy workshop right in Los Angeles there. And I don't know if he's still teaching those, but I found them useful early on. 4 things. It either builds your character, serves a specific function, moving a little closer. You need somebody to move, or you need something handled or moved into a specific position. So it's serve a very specific function, build your character, the setup to a joke, or the punchline to a joke. If it's not one of those 4 things, it's gone. And the best things can do all 4 of those at once. A punchline to a joke can actually be the setup to the capper, which comes after that. And any good joke that really fits your character does that well as well. And if it fits in with what you're doing, so that it's the function that needs to be done, all those can happen all at once. There's not 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. It's how many of those can you bring together?
Great advice. The problem in magic all too often is that you hear people say, like, oh, I can get 8 minutes out of this trick, or I can get 12 minutes out of this. And when I hear that, I'm like, that's like, I think in other forms of entertainment, you're like, how do I put more into there? How do I make this more efficient? How do I get to that point? How do I get to there clear? But there is this, even people we look up to in magic in some regards, because maybe they've got great technique or methods, they then prefer their advice on writing and other stuff. And I'm like, that's just bad advice. You're taking what should be a 2-minute effect and turning it into a 10 minutes. And that, not that that could be bad necessarily, but that 10 minutes isn't more entertaining. You just took the 2 minutes of entertainment and stretched it into 10 minutes and diluted it down. But you talk about, like, the efficiency there.
The opposite. You got the Woody Pittmans or the different people who will take a 2-minute trick and do 10 minutes of stand-up around it, and who honestly, why they're there is for the laughter and the fun. And if they're there, do whatever you want to do. That's not, you got to make those calls yourself, though. If you're just trying to get the most you can out of every trick, if I stretch this 10 minutes, then I'll have this much time. And no, that's, if you're filling time, or if that's the sense that people get that you might be filling time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great distinction, too. It's like,
then you're doing it back.
I'm sorry, what was that?
If the question even arises, is he just filling time? Then you're doing a bad job.
Well, I think that's a great example, though, because you take a guy like Jeff Hobson who takes a trick that could be a 2-minute trick and stretch. It's an 8-minute thing, but it's about, like you said, like it's the comedic bits. It's not about the trick. It's about all the comedy, and so he's not giving you a long history of whatever's going on about the card to the card to the pocket. That if he does and it's entertaining, that's fine. But he's giving you all these great moments from the card selection, every little moment, every bit of process he finds comedy in, and that's what it becomes about. And I think magicians often mistake that. Like, he spends 8 minutes doing it, but it's a great 8 minutes. It's this, we're watching a play. We're watching this great play of this thing trying to happen versus like, well, when I was a boy and I first learned this trick, it's like, don't care. So,
well, and it's not just funny, which it is, and it's not just entertaining and magical, which it is, but you also learn a lot about Jeff when he does that. After those 8 minutes, you feel like you know this guy inside and out. And then there's some other people that come out and 8 minutes into it, they've just been talking, but they haven't said or done anything. I mean, that's one of the games I play sometimes when I watch magic shows is I count the minutes to see how long it takes for anything, whether it's a joke or a line or a trick, to actually happen. And a lot of times you get 5-6 minutes in and nothing does.
Although I saw a Darren Brown special where it was 10 minutes before the first trick happened, but he was building so much drama through his character and his persona. By the time that thing happened, it had a tremendous amount of weight, and it was the kind of thing that could have been a throwaway in somebody else's act, but because he's building you in, he's luring you in, and you're getting up to this point when it does happen, it's amazing. So we're going to do after we end this session in about 15 minutes or so, we're going to go do our secret session here, and I'm excited about this, Frank, because every time I've ever seen you do anything, even something I think that, I think I know this trick, you've got a fresh angle, you've got a fresh take on it, something that makes me go, oh, that's clever. And very practical. Your stuff is extremely practical. You're really good at frying magicians. And I understand that you're going to show us your coins across? Or not?
4 coins across. My standard routine, we can talk back and forth about different ideas and some of the different thinking on it. Exactly.
Cool, wonderful. So
just to reiterate, Frank's standard routine is just about anyone else's like mind-blowingly revolutionary routine. He has some really clever things incorporated into it. It's just 4 coins. It's completely impromptu. It's all sleight of hand, but there are subtleties that play on different senses that you can apply to other things. So even if you don't do that routine, you will learn things about deception through it. And one of the most, I saw Frank do vanish a coin, just very simple coin vanish it was actually at Rudy Kobe's El Rey comeback show in LA here a couple years ago. And he just, with bare hands, vanished a coin. And to me, it was the most clean, amazing thing I'd ever seen. And everyone else around me was laughing hysterically because they all saw where the coin went. And I didn't. And it was the strangest juxtaposition of total miracle to me, yet I could see everyone else knew something that I didn't. So everything that Frank does and thinks about is, he takes something and goes levels beyond what most other magicians do. And I think part of that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is because, Frank, you're around a lot of magicians and you are unsatisfied with just doing the same stuff that everyone else is doing. You always want to do something that's going to fool the magicians, and you've developed things that really, really do.
Much of it I just developed by not being a magician when I was younger and trying to figure out on my own. So that's, part of it is just trying when you don't know that there's a limited set of possibilities, you're not limited by what you think those possibilities are. Like I'd heard about somebody being able to throw a coin so fast it would fly across without being able to see it. And I sat there trying to do faster and faster on my own and not getting there at all. I was trying to do this, where I'd turn both hands down at the same time. It's not working. And sitting there, and it turns out I'm feeling it leave my hand and focusing over towards the other hand, and it's landing in the other hand. I'm watching it every single time because I know exactly when it's going, and I'm moving my eyes across and following the coin. This is back when I was a teenager. My mother comes up and takes one look and says, "What did you just do?" Blown away. It was in that hand and then it's in that. I said, "You didn't see that?" I was watching it go across every time. And that moves as one of the moves we use in the 4 coins across. You'll see it.
Excellent.
The secret set.
Excellent. Yeah, it's often, you hear about a thing and then thinking of how it could work and do it can sometimes lead to a much more interesting pathway and do that. And then sometimes, like you point out, there's some moves that like that and some other like the gesture pitch or whatever. Then you do it, and you're like, oh, okay, I think I going on. And I'm like, is this really? And then you go do it for somebody, and they're just blown away. And you're like, oh, yeah, no, this works the way that it worked on me when I didn't know what was going on. Like I remember going to watch Rocco Solano the first time I ever saw Rocco perform. I went and I didn't know what he was known for, and I had no idea what he was known for, and so it was pure magic to me. Everyone's like, what do you think? I'm like, I got no idea. It's real. Magic's real. This is real. And then the lecture part starts, and he talks about that he's using blankety blank, and I'm like, awesome. I was like, it was pure delight for me because it was high point when he was doing this. It was so smooth and so wonderful. And I had I known that, he's known for this, I would have seen it as a magician. And I would have been going like, there's the moment. But I didn't know that. And that was, and that's the thing I always remind myself of was like when I did not know what the thing was that he was doing. And I thought I knew that thing and I didn't know the thing. That would made it great. I'm going to do a little bit of magic news here. This is the very helpful news from the Telegraph UK. How to be a magician. And they got a list. They say, starts off, clean fingernails are essential and you will be poor for many years. Troy von Scheiber explains why the life of a magician is not always magic. 1, you will be the most popular and hounded person at any party. Everyone is compelled to ask to see a trick as soon as you say, I'm a magician. Then once you show one person a trick, it's scary how it spreads like a virus. Then everyone knows you're a magician and you have to do tricks all night. True or false?
It sounds accurate to me.
I know that you're the most popular person at a party if you're a magician. I've heard all about how that happens.
Yeah.
And so
you're aware. You've heard. Somebody told you that. Like,
I've heard about these parties. They sound, there's like
you get girls like that. I've also heard all about how that was supposed to work.
You will. Number 2, you never leave the house empty-handed. He says he's always prepared. People see me on TV. It's like, you're like, guys, show me something. So he says he always has a pack of cards on him. So are you guys always? Well, Frank, you're a great improviser. So are you, Jordan. So you guys are both two people that, like, well, I got a hubcap. Sure, I'll figure something out. But
I personally, I always leave the house usually with a deck of cards, but it's not for the intent of doing shows or performing. The deck of cards usually is for practicing and messing around, and it's just a good thing to have on me. But I do, if somebody says, hey, show me a trick, I don't like the idea that I pull out something that's clearly a magic prop that I've been waiting to use. I prefer to ask for a coin and then do it like all the sleight of hand I've practiced with silver dollars, but I do it with a quarter, which is way more natural than, I happen to have these silver dollars on me. It's not as beautiful looking with a tiny quarter or even a penny that it would be with a big, beautiful, shiny coin. But the context is different too. And it's more magical, I think, if it comes naturally out of the environment. And I'll even, like, I always have rubber bands on me, but even if I have a pocket full of rubber bands, I will ask if somebody can produce rubber bands from a bar or a counter or anywhere, because that way I'm not holding out magic tricks ready to go.
Frank?
I keep cards in my pocket, and when I get the sense that somebody might be asking, I'll palm the deck in my hand, and when that question does come up, I just yeah, and it's just it's a big surprise to sneeze out a deck of cards or coins or whatever it is, and it's starting magic. If they're asking about magic, I'm doing magic to start it, and it gets a initial scream, and we're off and running.
I mean, those are great points because it's not just making it feel impromptu. You know, the idea that not like, well, let me go see if you're like, boom, it's oh my gosh, the miracle started. And Jordan, like you talked about, using somebody else's coin, I think is so powerful because it's like, no, it was my coin, and you could be like, well, what would it matter if it was their coin or whatever? But they don't know. But they'd be like, that's what made it special was that it was their coin, and it made it feel like you could just do anything. So number 3 is good breath and clean fingernails. They point out number 4 that it's Wild West out there for budding magicians because it's competitive. Number 5, most of the money you make will go back into buying playing cards.
No.
I think maybe get better paying gigs.
If you're a packet guy, that might be true. I'm not a big packet fan. I like a deck of cards, and every few weeks I'll go through another box of playing cards. Every couple months. Cards last me a pretty long time, actually. Except when I'm doing lots of shows, I tend to trash decks during a show, so I'll sometimes go through even 2 decks a show from just tossing them around and be.
I go through about a deck a week on the show because secret sessions I always end up the cards always end up all over the floor at the end of the session because we're practicing usually new moves that somebody's taught us.
He goes on to point out social skills are crucial since the Magic Circle's no joke. Well, Magic Castle members here, so we got our point of view on that. Building a reputation takes time for no money. Perhaps it won't happen overnight. And number 10, you'll need a thick skin. Frank, street performer, what was that like?
I was very blessed to be doing that when I was doing that. To get started in the early 80s with the Butterfly Man and the Fly-By-Night Jugglers and American Dream and all these other performers who were there was a community, a real sense of community. And at the same time I got started, I started developing, after talking to Frank and him pointing out that I need to get more loose, and that was what was wrong. Very quickly I started getting very funny. And I, in fact, started taking writing workshops with John Cantu, who ran the Holy City Zoo in San Francisco, where all the comedians would hang out, and I'd go and watch them and focusing on writing comedy. If you're wanting to do it, you focus on it. I've got some great pointers. If you want to, you can do one of the things that helped me the most back then. Finding 5 comedy albums I really, really, really liked, and listening to them over and over again until it does something weird to your brain. You start to understand where setups happen in real life. What around you is a setup for a joke. You start to be able to hear setups and realize, oh, what that person just said could be the setup if I can just think of the punchline. And
what were some of the comedy albums?
Yeah, listening through the same comedy albums over and over and over again, you'll find those specific jokes making their way into your repertoire. But beyond that, if you're open to it, and if you search for it, you'll find a new understanding of comedy, and comedy that you specifically like. That's why you choose. I mean, I was listening through Groucho's double album and Woody Allen and Dick Gregory and Richard Pryor was just the master at bringing himself into his life onto the stage in a way that nobody has done before or since.
I went through a period when I decided that being an illusionist was fun, but it wasn't doing anything to define my character. You know, that the fact that, Home Depot wasn't where I was going to find my personality. I watched a lot of comedy, older stuff too. I went back to start early on to go watch, and a lot of comedy albums, and I just bought every Steve Martin album I could because I just love Steve Martin. But And it was funny because I started looking presentationally, and I said, when I was doing kind of just more of my comedy magic, the performer who was never a performer, who was one of my favorite, I liked, but was never one of my favorites. But I said, man, this is style-wise sort of fits into where I was going, was Howie Mandel. That was a very sort of weird revelation, was that, I knew my delivery, my joke delivery was almost kind of Bob Saget sort of style, but then I looked at when I'm doing a trick and I said, I'm always sort of manic when I do my magic. And that was I never would have arrived at that if I hadn't gone in. And not that I said I tried to emulate either one of those guys, but I go, oh, that's coming from a place that perhaps that's where, I'm coming from a similar place, and I need to at least embrace that and try that to see that. Which,
So one of the other things we talk about on the show is Mellini moments, these sort of amazing confluence of everything working out at the right moment and also taking advantage of that as well. And we talked about a couple episodes ago where I found there was a watermelon at a house, an office, and I held it under the table for about an hour and produced it at just the right moment and to this great effect. Now, Frank has a lot of these sort of amazing, perfect Mellini moment stories where he creates absolute impossible miracles. You could probably do a whole show on just those, but do you have a favorite one or two that you want to share with us?
Right now, I was producing strawberries one night, just stuck a few of them off of the table into my pocket. They were these big, beautiful ones with long stems on them, and they were gorgeous, big, giant things. And I was doing these, and then late into the night, I was doing more magic at the end of the night, and this woman, and the strawberries had long since been put away. She said, "Oh, I would die for another one of those strawberries." And I reached out in the field, and I got one more. A flash paper poof, and handed her a long stem strawberry. She goes, "What?" We're just going, how is it? They were gone. They hadn't been around for a while.
It's amazing.
They were away. It was great fun to have her request that and be able to.
There's also the wardrobe malfunction that you told me about that happened to a gentleman one evening.
Oh yes, that was a hilarious one down there in L.A. at the Los Angeles at the California Club. It was this white tie affair. A guy comes in, and I'm doing magic as people are arriving. Everyone's coming in white tie and tails. I'm the one with the top hat on. That's what made me a magician that night. And I'm doing a bunch of tricks when people first come in, welcoming them. There's an old guy who comes in with a very young lady from his company on his arm. And I look down and I see his vest has the studs on the outside. His vest is inside out. The studs, the clips of the studs are backwards, are showing. His whole white vest is inside out. And I catch her eye at a moment, and I tug on my vest, and like, his vest is inside out. And she nods like, "Yeah, you gonna tell him?" I do a couple quick tricks for him, and then I say, "But let's put the cards aside. Let's do something with no props. Do you think it would be possible to take someone's vest off of them without removing their coat?" He says, "I don't see how." I go, "Let's take it a step beyond that." And I pull him by the lapels in really close to me, and I tug at his vest, here, there, boom, boom, and I say, "There, I've turned your vest inside out." And he looks down and says, "What the?" The rest of the night, it didn't matter how amazing whatever I did was. He had to tell every person about this. "That's nothing. You should have seen what he did earlier. He turned my vest around while it was still on me, inside out." He says, he did it in less than 5 seconds. It took me 5 minutes in the men's room to turn it around the right way.
And that's wonderful, because your biggest ally is his ego. Is that he does not want to believe the fact that he left the house like an idiot with his vest inside out. So we'd much rather believe that Gandalf came along and cast a spell and did that. And This is awesome. Frank, I'm super excited about the secret session, so I think we're going to bring this this episode of Magic Club to a close here. If Jordan wants to use the invisible gavel, and any place where people can get hold of you or reach out, find out more about where your shows are.
Find out at twistedcabaret.com. You can also go to funnyfrank.com. Those are my two websites. Twisted Cabaret is my theater show, and Funny Frank just primarily juggling and unicycling, but it's got a bunch of stuff on there.
I highly recommend anybody listening get on. Do you have a mailing list at Twisted Cabaret, or should they just check in? Or
they can find, I'm pretty sure that you can get online. You can find it online right there at twistedcabaret.com. You can get on the mailing list.
Sweet, because
good fun.
You need to see a show. You need to see Frank's show. It's one of these things that expands your idea of what magic and entertainment can be. You watch this and you realize it literally fills the room. There's characters. There's all sorts of stuff going on. And you walk out of there going, man, my magic feels so small, and it could be so much bigger than what it is. So by all means, check that out. And if in town performing near you, bring all your friends and cheer and throw money on stage and, whatever.
Up in Vancouver, BC. Come on out if you can make it up there.
Sweet. All of our friends to the north. Gentlemen, let's bring this episode to a close.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Frank.
Funk.